This video is going to be about all the things that I've done, mods and interesting maintenance items since I've owned this truck. I acquired it at 171,000 miles. I've had it for about almost 4.5 years, and it's got 320,000 miles on it now. And I guess I'll start with some of the more cosmetic appearance things. It came with the paint match bumper and grill. It's a sport appearance package. I put on these 17-inch fuel boost wheels. They're a nice off-road looking wheel, pretty conservative on the size and appearance as well, which I like. And the 17 inch is the stock size, and that's nice because if I ever did get in a off-road bind, I could air down the tires with plenty of room there for the tires to air down with that small of a rim. And the tires themselves, they are 35 by 12.5 Toyo open country mud terrains, and what a wonderful tire as far as tread life goes. We are making our approach to 80,000 miles on this set. Now the last set didn't go that far, but these have been like a miracle set of tires. Amazing. But and they look great too. Headlights are aftermarket. They got the black, sort of black on the interior, but they're not smoked, and they've got a clear, I guess they call that crystal reflector on the side, which I like. Very clean look. Looks great with the white paint job. And then the fender flares. I actually don't know what brand these are. They're not Bushwhackers, but they're good quality, and they're a lot cheaper. I think I found them on Amazon, if I'm not mistaken. But they're the off-road looking ones, and they look great as well. Performance-wise, that's really... Actually, we got a back rack here, which came with the truck, but that's nice to protect the back windshield. And performance-wise, exhaust. 4-inch MBRP exhaust with a 5-inch tip. And the intake is a AFE cold air intake. Let me get you a look at that. And I've switched the filter. Originally I had an oiled filter on there. Now I've got a dry filter, which I'm happy with that. This filter, I've never cleaned it, but it still looks pretty clean. Another upgrade was this Bilstein 5100 steering stabilizer shock that you see there. Good quality stabilizer shock, much better than OEM. Back here I have installed fifth wheel rails, and you can see I've got a gooseneck attachment on top of that at the moment, but I've also got a fifth wheel hitch. If I ever need to tow gooseneck or fifth wheel trailers, I'm able to do so. The prior owner helped me out quite a bit because he had the brackets there welded to the frame, so that's nice and solid. And he already had the holes drilled in the bed. So all I really had to do was bolt this up. The hardest part was all his old bolts had rusted and it basically seized up. And I went through some drilling and some, ended up getting a nut splitter to actually get those off, and that took quite a lot of effort. So from a maintenance standpoint, this truck's been relatively low maintenance. It's actually been very reliable, and I've never had to open the engine up or anything like that. And I took note of what I did and when I did it. The first thing I did on the truck was the fuel control actuator, which is down there right at the back of the CP3. Now this never went bad. I suspected that it was going bad, but what actually happened was it was an electrical issue. Someone had installed, prior owner had installed a pressure box on here, and that went bad. And I simply just replaced that with a standard wiring harness up here somewhere, and everything was good to go. So nothing was actually wrong with that, but it did get replaced. At 186,000 miles, I replaced the water pump, and I have actually replaced the water pump 3 times. It occurred again at 257,000. At that time, I replaced the thermostat and belt tensioner along with it, and it happened a third time at 297,000 miles. And this has probably been the biggest struggle with this truck, has been the water pumps. I now have a lifetime warranty water pump, so it doesn't cost me anything if they ever do go bad. At 205,000 miles, I had to replace the rear brake pads and rotors. They had definitely wore out, and they were making some squealing noises, so I replaced those. And at the same time, I did my front end rebuild. New sway bars, new tie rod ends, and I had to replace this wheel bearing. Actually, it was on this side that I did the wheel bearing, and new upper ball joints. The only reason this wheel bearing needed to be replaced because it got stuck. In order to do the ball joints, you got to remove the wheel bearing, and it had gotten stuck, so I basically had to destroy it and put a new one on. At 207,000 miles, I upgraded my drive belt to a Gates belt, and that belt did not last very long. I ended up replacing it again about 30,000 miles later, and I upgraded at that point to the Continental Gatorback, formerly known as the Goodyear Gatorback. And a lot of you'll notice that the truck will squeak a bit when you shut them down, but with this belt, it takes that out, and so when you shut it down, it's quiet. At 216,000 miles, I ended up doing the front brakes and rotors. They had needed it at that point, but over 100,000 miles later, we still got about a third of our tread on our brake pads still. The batteries were originally replaced at 234,000 miles, and I put Caterpillar batteries in here. I replaced the batteries again at 309,000 with these Optima Blue Tops. I found out that the batteries hadn't even gone bad, but I was doing it as a precautionary measure because I was having a slow crank on my truck. At 240,000 miles, I put these Bilstein 5100 shocks on all 4 corners, and I also replaced the front axle U-joints. They are in the knuckle there. At the same time, I had to replace the driver's wheel bearing again under warranty. It had just gone bad, and replaced it once more, and it's been fine ever since. I actually put a Moog wheel bearing on the second time, and a lot of people don't like the Moogs, but this one is holding up rather well for me. At 245,000 miles, I ended up replacing the lift pump on the back of the fuel filter canister, and it was the original lift pump because it had that nylon, permanently attached nylon hose to it. This is an impressive mileage for your first lift pump change because these are considered one of the less reliable components on the whole truck. At 247,000 miles, I replaced the alternator and also put new windshield wipers on. As I found out, the alternator wasn't bad either. I just had to replace this wire, which runs up to the battery here. That one. And that was the issue, just that wire, a couple bucks. But I ended up thinking it was the alternator and replaced it. You'll notice half the things I've replaced on this truck turned out not to be bad. You know, sucks, but then it doesn't really. You don't have to do it again. You know, I know this alternator is going to be good for quite a while now. Now for the passenger's wheel bearing. It went out at 252,000 miles, and it went out bad. It wasn't graceful. It went out pretty suddenly, and since I replaced that, this one's held up rather well. I actually put a Duralast wheel bearing on, which is not really well known in the Cummins world, but the Duralast may source their wheel bearings from Timken, which is a really good brand. While I was at it, I changed the differential fluid in both the front and the rear at the same time. Then I did the rear speed sensor, 260,000 miles. Not a catastrophic thing. I let that go on for a long time. It just lit up some lights. It's on top of the rear diff there, and it's just a $20 part. The next thing I did as just kind of a nice thing to do for the truck was I changed the brake fluid at 265,000 miles. Wasn't really something that you would do too frequently. Maybe once in the lifetime of the truck would you be interested in doing that. I thought that with the truck being over 250,000 miles, it was a good time to do it. And then I had nothing to do on the truck for almost 50,000 miles after that. I ended up replacing the upper radiator hose, seen here, and a new radiator cap as well. My old radiator hose had gotten swollen, and putting a new one on was the answer to that problem. And the last thing I did, which is, I already talked about them, the Optima batteries at 309,000 miles, along with these brand new battery cables and a new starter. That's been the last thing I've had to work on this truck. No injectors, no turbo, no transmission issues. So that is huge as far as avoiding the expensive repairs. So not a lot of maintenance required for this truck. I've left it stock. It's got no tune on it. It's got stock injectors, stock turbo. The only thing that's upgraded is the intake and exhaust, which actually helps the reliability and fuel economy out. So it's set up to be a low maintenance vehicle. So after 4.5 years, the truck has proven itself to be very reliable. It's gone 150,000 miles now for me in that time. And I've just been very happy with it, and I hope it continues to perform well. Of course, you got your oil changes and your fuel filter changes in there too. And that's just part of the basic maintenance. But really, everything that's been done on this truck, the front end rebuild occurred at a time that, you know, most trucks would need a front end rebuild by 205,000. Right now, I think it's going to need another ball joint job in the near future. They're not blown, but they're on the border of having enough play in them that they got to get replaced. But I'm just testing, going 10,000 miles at a time and see if anything changes. And then someday I'll replace them. Truck could probably use a trans rebuild, but the trans is hanging in there for me and has since I've had the truck. In fact, when I bought the truck, I thought a trans rebuild might be in the near future, but it's been 4.5 years, 150K, and what seems like a stock transmission is still holding on for me. So that'll do it for me in this video. Hope you enjoyed hearing about all the different things that I've actually had to deal with in real life of, you know, this long of ownership. And hopefully it's helped someone out if someone's concerned about what's it going to take to keep one of these trucks running. So have a good one, everyone.